The inspiring journey of a startup, how Abhishek built his podcast empire. The beginning of Abhishek's dream. Abhishek had always been a curious soul. Growing up in a small town, he was surrounded by the people who believed in simple living. Dreams, according to the most around him, were about getting a stable job, earning a decent salary, and settling down with a family. But Abhishek was different. He never said it out loud when he was a young, but deep inside, he knew he wanted something bigger. Something that would make a difference not only in his life but in the lives of thousands of people around the world. As a child, he loved listening stories, whether it was his father's narrating tales from his youth or his teacher sharing experiences or even random people talking about their lives. Abhishek was hooked. He realized early on the stories had power. They could make people laugh, cry, dream, and even change their lives. But he didn't know how this love or stories would shape his future. During his school years, Abhishek was an average student. He was not the topper, not the most specific athlete, not the one teacher praised all time, but he had one thing that made him stand out: his voice. His teacher said often, "Abhishek, when you read something loud, it feels like we are listening to a radio." His friends teased him, calling him Radio Boy, but secretly Abhishek liked that nickname. Maybe his voice could be his strength, one day he thought. Years passed and Abhishek went to the college in city. It was his first time for the real exposure to the fast-paced world. People here were ambitious. Some wanted to become engineers, some doctors, some wanted to go abroad. Abhishek, on the other hand, was still figuring things out. He didn't want to follow the same usual path. Deep down, he wanted to build something of his own, something unique, something crazy. One evening, while scrolling through his phone, Abhishek discovered podcast. He listened to a random show where a host interviewed a successful entrepreneur. For the next hour, Abhishek forgot everything around him. The conversation felt real, raw, and inspiring. It wasn't like the scripted TV shows, it was honest. At the moment, something clicked in his mind. What if my start own podcast one day? He thought. The idea felt exciting but also scaring. He had no equipment, no experience, and no audience. Who would listen to him? But he thought to refuse to leave his mind. Days passed, but Abhishek kept imagining himself as a podcast host, sharing stories of people who struggled, failed, and eventually succeed. However, life had other plans. After graduations, Abhishek's parents wanted him to take up a stable job. He got a marketing job in a small firm. The pay wasn't great, the work hours were long, but it was what everyone expected him to do. For 2 days, Abhishek worked in that job. He woke up, went to office, come back tired and repeated the cycle. But that was not 2 days, that was for 2 years. But deep inside, he was unhappy. He knew this wasn't his calling. He wanted more. He wanted to create something meaningful. One night, after a particularly frustrating day at work, Abhishek sat on his small balcony looking at the city lights. His mind went back to the podcast idea. He thought about all the people out there who had dreams, who were struggling just like him, who needed inspiration. Maybe he could give them the tough voice. That is that, he whispered to himself. I am going to do it. I am going to start my own podcast. That decision was made. But decisions are easy, executions is hard. Abhishek had no saving. His salary barely covered rent and expenses. Buying a professional microphone or setting up a studio was out of the question. But he didn't let that stop him. He borrowed his friend's old headphones, used free recording software on his laptop, and created a makeshift recording corner in his small room. For the first episode, he didn't have a great guest. He simply spoke about his own life, his struggles, his dreams, and why he was starting the podcast. His voice trembled at times, there were background noises, and the audio quality was far from perfect. But when he uploaded that episode, he felt a strange sense of pride. He had taken the first step. Days turned into weeks. Abhishek started researching out to people, friends, local entrepreneur, artists, anyone with a story to tell. Most people ignored him, some laughed at the ideas, a few agreed but cancelled at the last minute. It was disheartening. There were moments when Abhishek questioned himself. Maybe this was a mistake, he thought. His podcast had barely any listeners. No one seemed to care. But then something happened that changed everything. One evening, while scrolling through emails, he found a message from a listener. It was a young college student who wrote, "Your episode about chasing dreams really inspired me. I was about to give up on my passion for writing, but after listening to you, I decided to keep going. Thank you." Abhishek read that email 5 times. A stranger had been moved by his word. For the first time, he realized that even if only the person is listened, it still mattered. Fueled by the motivation, Abhishek kept going. He improved his content, learned basic audio editing, created a simple logo for his podcast channel, and slowly started to find the style of host. Months passed, and his podcast began to get a small but loyal audience. People liked the honesty. He wasn't a celebrity, he wasn't a rich, he was just a regular guy talking about the real struggles and real dreams. But life wasn't going to make this much easy for him. Just as things were improving, his company downsized, and Abhishek lost his job. Suddenly, he had no income. His parents were worried. His friends advised him to be practical and find another job quickly. Abhishek was torn. He needed money, but he also didn't want to give up on his podcast dream. After long of thinking, he decided to work part-time as a freelance content writer to cover basic expenses and dedicate the rest of his time to growing with podcast. It was a risky decision, but Abhishek believed in his dream. Slowly, he started inviting slightly bigger guests, local business owners, artists with some followers, and motivational speakers. Some agreed because they liked the passion. With every episode, his confidence grew. He learned to ask better questions, to edit better, and to market his podcast on social media. One day, out of nowhere, a popular entrepreneur agreed to come on his show. Abhishek couldn't believe it. That episode brought him hundreds of new listeners. People started listening and sharing it on social media. For the first time, Abhishek felt like he was on the right path. But with growth came new challenges. Managing content, editing, marketing, it was all becoming too much for one person. Abhishek realized he needed help, but he couldn't afford to hire anyone. That's when his college friend Rohan stepped in. Rohan was good at social media marketing. He offered help for free because he believed in Abhishek's vision. Together, they started planning content, creating better graphics, and promoting the podcast more aggressively. Slowly, sponsorship offers started coming in. At first, they were small local brands willing to pay a few hundred rupees for shoutouts, but for Abhishek, it was a huge deal. His podcast was finally earning money. By the end of the year, Abhishek had built a small, strong community of listeners. People regularly messaged him saying how his podcast episode motivated them to chase his dreams. But Abhishek wasn't satisfied. He didn't just want to upload a podcast, he wanted an empire. He dreamed of having multiple shows, a team of hosts, a proper studio, and a million of listeners worldwide. Abhishek thought the hardest part was over. He had started from nothing, built a podcast that people actually listened to, brought in a few sponsors, and even had a small team. Just Rohan for now, but still, it was a progress. But life has a strange way of testing people when they least expect it. The storm arrives. The new year brought big dreams for Abhishek. He planned to start a second show under the same podcast name, this time focusing on the more entrepreneur successful stories. The main show would continue with motivation, life struggles, and general inspiration. But right then, started planning, his laptop suddenly crashed. All his recording, editing software, and plans were locked inside a dead machine. He took it to repair shop, but the cost was too high. With no full-time job and a small sponsorship money, Abhishek didn't know how he would recover. For the first time, he thought about giving up, but Rohan reminded him, "Bro, this is just one setback. You can borrow a laptop, record at my place if needed, just don't stop now." Abhishek knew Rohan was right, so he borrowed a laptop from a college friend and continued recording. The audio quality wasn't perfect, editing was slow, but episode kept coming. That was Abhishek's rule now. Never miss an episode, no matter what happens. The big opportunity. One day, Abhishek received an email that would change everything. A famous motivation speaker, someone with millions of followers, had listened to one of Abhishek's episodes through a recommendation and loved it. The email read, "Hey Abhishek, I like your style. Would love to come on your podcast." Abhishek read it 3 times. His heart raced. This was an opportunity of lifetime. When the episode went live, it went viral. Thousands of people listened. For the first time, Abhishek podcast ranked on national charts. He gained thousands of new followers overnight. Sponsorship offers started flooding in. Brands that had never had earlier ignored his emails were now reaching out for collaborations. For a moment, Abhishek felt like he had made it. But he didn't realize his biggest challenge was still waiting. Success brings pressure. With growth came expectation. Listener wanted better production quality, bigger guests, and faster uploads. Sponsors want professional presentation, detailed reports, and perfect execution. Abhishek was just one person, with Rohan's helping part-time. The pressure started to get on him. He barely slept, working late nights to edit episodes, create on social media posts, reply to emails, and plan content. One evening, while recording an episode, Abhishek's voice cracked badly. He had been talking non-stop for hours. His doctor told him to rest for his voice for at least 1 week. But Abhishek couldn't afford to stop. The audience wanted weekly episodes. Sponsored had deadlines. He recovered anyway, hiding his pain behind a smile. The betrayal. Just when things seemed under control, something unexpected happened. A new podcast suddenly appeared on the same platform. Its style, guest, and even the episode title looked very similar to Abhishek's. At first, he didn't care, competition was normal, but then he found out the host was someone he would once mentored, a person he had guided in starting of podcast. That person had taken Abhishek methods, contacts, and ideas and started their own show. Worse, some sponsors switched to the new podcast because it was offered at lower rates. Abhishek felt crushed. He had always believed in helping others, but now his own kindness was being used against him. For 2 days, he didn't record anything. He just sat in his room, taking if all this was worth it. But then he remembered why he started, to inspire people, not for money, not for fame, but to make a difference. He came back stronger, this time with new ideas, video podcasts, live session with audience for collaborations with influencers. If someone wanted to complete, they would have been keep up with the speed. Building the brand. Abhishek realized he couldn't do this all alone. So he and Rohan started looking for interns, people who believed in his vision and were willing to work for a small pay or even experience. Soon they had a small team, a college student for video editing, a social media intern for reels and posts, a freelance graphic designer. The podcast started looking more professional. Video clips from episodes went viral on Instagram and YouTube Shorts. Within months, the podcast had millions of views online. Abhishek was invited to college for guest lectures as on entrepreneurship and content creation. But along with fame came hate comments, online trolling, and constant criticism. Abhishek had to learn to ignore negativity and stayed focused. The first big revenue. After almost 2 years of struggle, Abhishek finally cracked a big sponsorship deal with a natural brand. It was worth more than all his previous deals combined. For the first time, he was making a real money. He used it to buy better equipment, rent a small studio, and pay his team properly. The dream of building a podcast empire was slowly becoming real. Just as everything was going well, an email arrived from the platform hosting his podcast. There was a copyright claim on one of his most popular episodes. That claim demanded a huge amount of money or the episode would be taken down, along with the possible legal action. Abhishek had never faced something like this before. His entire reputation and future earning were at risk. The fight for the dream. The email about the copyright claim felt like a punch on his stomach. Abhishek stared at the screen, reading the words again and again. Your episode contains copyright material. Legal action will be taken if this matter is not resolved. His heart sank. That episode wasn't just an episode, it was one of that episode that just gone viral. The one that brought him thousands of listeners, the one sponsor loved to promote. If it was removed, he could lose not just the money but the credibility too. He called Rohan immediately. Bro, we have a big problem, Abhishek said, his voice shaking. Rohan read the email and stayed silent for a moment. This could be serious. We need to find out what exact they are claiming. The investigation. Abhishek reached out to the platform and the claimant. After hours of emails and calls, he discovered the issue. A small background music clip he had used in that episode apparently belonged to a music company. Even though it was just for a few seconds long, they were demanding thousands in damages. Abhishek felt sick. He had downloaded that music from a free site. How was supposed to know it was safe to use? The music company refused to listen. They threatened to involve lawyers if he didn't pay. For the first time since starting the podcast, Abhishek thought, maybe this is the end. Maybe I can't fight this. The darkest days. The stress was unbearable. He couldn't sleep. Sponsors paused their deals until the issue was resolved. His team looked up for the answer, but Abhishek himself felt lost. In those days, he avoided social media. He couldn't bear to see comments from people asking, when is the next episode coming? Rohan tried to keep things together. Look, bro, he said one evening, every business faces storm. This is ours. We can't quit now. But Abhishek felt the weight of the entire empire crashing down before it was even built. The turning point. Then something unexpected happened. A well-known lawyer who was also a fan of Abhishek's podcast reached out after hearing about his problem. He offered help for free, saying, your podcast inspired me during the tough times. Let me handle this. Within weeks, the lawyer proved that music clip fell under the fair use because it was a part of an interview segment and not used commercially at that time. The music company backed off. The episode was restored. Abhishek felt like he could breathe again. This incident taught him two big lessons. Always use original or licensed material. Never give up, no matter how bad things look. Arising from ashes. After the crisis, Abhishek decided to turn his pain into fuel. he started a new series on the podcast called Behind the Struggles, where guests shared his biggest challenges they faced before achieving. Listeners loved it. The series became one of the most popular segments on his show. Sponsor returned, bigger guests come on the board, and the audience grew like never before. Abhishek also began giving talks about content creation, entrepreneurship, and resilience at colleges and startup events. One day, after a speech, a young girl came to him and said, "Sir, your story made me believe I can follow my dreams too. Thank you." That moment reminded Abhishek why he started his journey in the first place. The expansion begins. With money from sponsorships and events, Abhishek finally set up a professional studio. Bright lights, soundproof walls, multiple mics, the works. He launched two new shows: Startup Stories, interviews with young entrepreneurs, live lessons with Abhishek's solo episodes where he shared practical advice. Each show had its own different audience. His small team grew into a proper company with editors, marketers, and researchers. Rohan became the official co-founder. Abhishek podcast empire was slowly taking the shape. The fame and the fear. As Abhishek grew more famous, investigations to big media events started. Newspaper called him the voice of new generation, but fame brought new fears. What if people stopped liking this content? What if a bigger creator copied his style and stole his audience? What if sponsors left again? Success felt fragile, like a glass tower that could shatter any time. Abhishek realized he needed to build something so big and unique that no one could break it. A new vision. One night, while staring at the city lights from his office window, Abhishek wrote in his notebook, "I don't want to just be a podcaster. I want to build the Netflix or podcast, multiple shows, global reach, and millions of listeners." It was crazy dream, but so was everything had done so far. He shared the idea with Rohan, who was grinding, and said, "Let's do it." The empire or the exit. The email from the international media company felt unreal. They offered a figure Abhishek had never seen in his life. Enough money to buy a house in the city, travel the world, and secure his family future, and live without worrying about the bills ever again. Rohan read the email 3 times and looked at Abhishek. "Bro, this is crazy. If we accept this, we are set for life." Abhishek stayed silent. He kept staring at the city lights outside the studio window. For years, he had worked day and night to build this podcast network from nothing through sleepless nights, financial struggles, betrayals, criticism, and countless rejection. And now, someone wanted to buy it all in one stroke. The temptation. For the next few days, Abhishek couldn't sleep. The offer was tempting. He could take the money, invest it, and maybe even start something new. But deep inside, a voice kept asking, "Is this why you started? For money or for the impact?" He remembered the first email he ever got from a listener thanking him for inspiring them. He remembered the time he had recorded episodes in his tiny room with borrowed laptop. He remembered how this podcast had become his life's purpose. Selling it felt like selling his dream. The decision. After a week of thinking, Abhishek called Rohan and the team for a meeting. "I have made my decision," he said. His voice was firm. "We are not selling." The room fell silent. This podcast is not just a business, Abhishek continued. It's a movement. People listen to us because they trust us. If we sell now, it will become just another corporate product. I want to build something that lasts, something that's our. Rohan smiled. I was hoping you will say that. The team erupted in applause. They knew the road ahead would be tough, but they were ready to fight the dream. The Big Leap. With renewed energy, Abhishek launched his biggest podcast or a biggest project yet, Podcast Empire Studio, a full-fledged company producing multiple shows across genres, business, motivation, health, relationships, and the youth culture. He hired professional hosts, partnered with colleges for talent hunts, and even launched a mobile app where people could listen to all shows under one roof. Within a year, Podcast Empire Studios became the fastest growing podcast network in the country. Giving back. Success didn't make Abhishek arrogant. He remembered his struggles, the nights with no money, the rejection, the times he almost quit. So he started a podcast creator academy, offering free workshops for young creators who had ideas but no resources. He donated equipment to students who wanted to start but couldn't afford mics or editing tools. Your dream shouldn't die because of lack of money, he told them. The recognition. Soon, awards started pouring in. Abhishek was invited to an international conference, featured in magazines, and called the Podcast King of India by a leading newspaper. But his favorite moments were still the emails from the listeners saying, "Your podcast changed my life." The full circle. One evening, years after he had started with nothing, Abhishek sat alone in his massive studio. He thought about the boy who once recorded in a tiny room with borrowed headphones, the boy who almost quit after betrayals, failures, and copyright threats, the boy who had dreamed of an empire when no one believed in him, and now here he was with a team, a network, or legacy. The final message. In his last solo episode of the season, Abhishek spoke directly to his audience. Years ago, I was just a guy with a voice, a dream, and no resources. People laughed, door closed, mistakes happened, but one thing kept me doing, that was faith. Faith that hard work pays off. Faith that no dream is too small. If you are listening to this and feel like giving up, don't. Maybe your success is just one more try away. Build, rise, fail, and fall. But don't quit. One day, your story will inspire someone else to keep going. That's how we change the world, one dream at a time. The episode went viral, not because it was flashy, but because it was real. The legacy. Years later, people would talk about Abhishek not just a podcast host, but as a pioneer who changed the audio industry in India. His podcast, Empire Studios, produced dozens of shows, mentored hundreds of young creators, and reached millions of listeners worldwide. But if you asked Abhishek about his biggest achievement, he would simply smile and say, it was never about the money or never about the fame. It was about providing that even an ordinary voice can create an extraordinary impact. And with that, Abhishek's journey from a small town dreamer to a creator of a podcast empire became a story told in classrooms, business seminars, and of course on podcast everywhere. The end. Abhishek didn't just build a podcast empire, he built hope, he built inspiration, he built a legacy that would outlive him. From Zero to Hero, the story of Sahil. Sahil was born in a small town where opportunities were as rare as rainfall in the desert. His family lived in a tiny one room house with walls that cracked in the summer heat and leaked in the monsoon rains. His father worked as a clerk in a local government office, earning just enough to put food on the table but never enough to dream beyond the next day's expenses. His mother snitched clothes for neighbor to make a little extra money. As a child, Sahil saw the world from the corner of the broken window. He often wondered why some children in his town were worn a new shoes, carried shiny school bags, and spoke of vacations, while he had to share a single pair of sandals with his younger brother to study under the dim light of a kerosene lamp. But what set Sahil apart was his mind. He was curious, he had things burning to desire to know how the world worked, how business grew, how people became rich, and why success felt like a dream only for the chosen few. At the age of 12, while his classmates played cricket in the dusty lanes, Sahil stood outside a small cyber cafe, peeking through the glass window at the glowing computer screens inside. Internet was a luxury his family couldn't afford, but every now and then the cafe owner allowed him to enter for 10 minutes for free. In those 10 minutes, Sahil didn't waste time on games. He searched for the story of successful people, read about business tycoons, and tried to understand words like startup, entrepreneurship, and investment. He didn't understand everything at once, but something inside him shifted. He decided, one day I will not just read about success, I will live it. But life wasn't a straight road for Sahil. It was a maze full of dead ends. The first blow. When Sahil was 15, his father fell seriously ill. Medicine bills pile up. The little saving of his family had vanished within the months. Sahil saw his mother cry quietly at night, hiding her tears while cooking dinner. One evening, he overheard his parents talking. "We might have to stop Sahil schooling after this year," his father said weakly. "I just can't manage the fees anymore." Those words hit Sahil like a storm. Education was only the ladder he thought could take him out of the poverty, and now even that was slipping away. That night, Sahil couldn't sleep. He started at the ceiling, fell sleepless, angry, and scared all at once. But he made a decision. I will not let money decide my future. I have to work, beg, or fight. I will continue my studies. The next day, we went to a nearby tea stall and asked for a work after school hours. The tea seller, seeing the determination in his eyes, agreed to pay him a small amount for serving tea and cleaning tables. For the next 2 years, Sahil balanced school in the morning and work in the evening. He studied late into the nights, often with half-closed eyes, but he refused to give up. The hardship craved something unbreakable inside him, a resilience most people never develop. The spark of an idea. At 17, Sahil came across a newspaper article about a young entrepreneur who started a small business from home and made it big. The article described how the boy sold handmade candles online and eventually built a company worth millions. Sahil read the article at least 10 times. His heart raced. If he can do it, why can't I? He thought. He started observing business around him, the local grocery shop, the cyber cafe, the tailoring shop. Each one gave him clues about profit, loss, and customers. He didn't have money to start anything big, but he realized one thing: business was about solving problems. If he could find a problem and solve it, people would pay. But what problem was a 17-year-old can solve? That question followed him everywhere, while serving tea, while studying, even while walking to school. One day, while working at a tea stall, he noticed college students complaining about the lack of affordable notebooks in area. Branded notebooks were expensive and local ones were low quality. That when an idea struck. What if I buy a plain paper in bulk, bind it cheaply and sell good quality notebooks at low prices? It was small, almost laughable to others, but to Sahil, it felt like a first step towards his dream. The first venture. With his small saving from a tea stall, Sahil bought paper, cardboard covers, and binding glue. He spent nights learning how to bind notebook properly by watching free tutorials at the cyber cafe. A week later, he had his first batch of 50 notebooks. They weren't perfect, they weren't neat, affordable, and better than cheap ones in the market. Sahil convinced a few college students to try them. To surprise him, they loved it. Word spread slowly, and within the month, he was selling dozens of notebooks every week. For the first time in his life, Sahil felt the thrill of earning not just for survival but by creating something on his own. He reinvested every rupee into buying more material. But success, even a small success, attracts challenges. The setback. One evening, when Sahil went to buy paper from regular supplier, he found the prices has doubled. A local stationery shop owner had discovered Sahil's small venture and, fearing competition, had influenced supplier to stop giving him discounts. Within days, Sahil's cost of making notebooks shoot up and his profit vanished. Worse, some student complained about a few notebooks having a loose pages. Sahil had rushed through production and compromised quality. Sales dropped. People who once praised his notebook now said the idea was good, but he couldn't handle it. It broke Sahil's heart. He shut down the venture temporarily. Nights that were once full of dreams now enchanted with self-doubt. Maybe I am not made for business, he thought. The mysterious stranger. One rainy evening, while waiting for a bus, Sahil met an elderly man at a bus stop. The man was reading a book titled The Power of Persistence. Curious, Sahil asked about it. The man smiled and said, "It's about the people who failed 100 times before succeeding. Most people quit after the first failure. That's why only few people reach at the top." Those words felt like they were written for Sahil. He told the man about his failed notebook business. The man listened patiently and then said something that Sahil never forgot. "Son, business is like learning to walk. You will fall many times, but each fall will teach you where the ground is slippery. If you stop walking, you will never run to learn." Before leaving, the man added, "Start again, but this time smarter." Those words lit a fire in Sahil's heart. The comeback plan. Sahil analyzed everything that went wrong: supplier issue, quality problem, lack of backup money. He realized he couldn't rely on one supplier. He needed multiple sources of materials. He also needed to improve quality before selling. Over the next 2 months, he saved more money, learned better blinding techniques, and negotiated with new suppliers outside his town. When he relaunched the notebook business, it was stronger, the quality was better, the prices was competitive, and this time he even printed a simple brand name on the cover. It was Sahil Smart Notes. Sales picked up again. Slowly but steadily, by the time he finished school, Sahil, had sold over 2000 notebooks and saved enough money to fund his college education without buttering his parents. But deep inside, he knew notebooks weren't just a beginning. He wanted to build something far bigger, something that could change entire life. The college years, new dreams, new challenges. College exposed Sahil to a bigger world. Students talk about startups, apps, and online businesses. Some even ordered gadgets from websites Sahil had never heard from. For the first time, he used high speed internet in the college library. He read about the companies like Apple, Amazon, Tesla, how they started in garages and became giants. His mind buzzed with ideas. One day, during a seminar, a guest speaker said, "The future belongs to those who can use technology and solve real problems." The word struck with Sahil, but fate had other plans. Twist of life. In the second year of college, Sahil's father passed away after a long illness. The loss shattered him. His father had dreamed of seeing Sahil graduate, maybe even get a stable job. Now he was gone, leaving behind memories and a family struggling emotionally and financially. Relatives advised Sahil to quit college and take up full-time job to support the family. For days, he was torn between responsibility and dreams. The weight of reality pressed hard on his shoulder. But one evening, sitting alone on terrace, Sahil whispered to himself, "If I give up now, everything ends. If I fight, maybe there is hope." And he chose to fight. The mysterious online world. To support his family while studying, Sahil started exploring online freelancing. He learned basic graphic designing through free tutorials and began offering services to the platform like Fiverr. At first, clients paid very little, some even rejected his work harshly, but Sahil improved day by day. But more than money, freelancing taught him something priceless: the power of internet to connect talent with opportunity. The storm before the rise. The morning after graduation, Sahil stood outside his tiny house, watching the sun climb over the horizon. The world felt different. He wasn't a schoolboy anymore. He wasn't the tea stall helper at part-time, freelance, struggling for pocket money. He was a young man with different dreams that didn't fit inside a small town anymore. But dreams don't alone pay the bills. His mother wanted him to take a government job. "It's safe, Sahil," she said softly, her tired eyes filled with concern. "Your father always wanted stability for you." But stability felt like a cage to Sahil. He didn't want to live counting salaries and waiting for promotions that never came. He wanted freedom, financial, creative, and personal. So one evening, sitting under the same broken window where he had spent his childhood watching the world pass by, Sahil made a decision. "I will start my own company. It won't be easy, but it either built it or break myself trying." And that was the beginning of everything. The first business idea. Months of freelancing had shown the Sahil a big problem in market. Small businesses needed online presence, websites, logo, social media, but professional service were too expensive for them. Big agency charged lakhs, freelancers were cheap but unreliable. Sahil thought, what if I built a platform that connects small businesses with affordable, talented freelancer but with quality assurance? It sounded like crazy for someone with little money, no connection, and zero tech background. But Sahil believed in learning by doing. He named his dream project a skill consent. The plan was simple. On one side, small businesses could post their needs. On the other side, verified freelancers could offer services at affordable rates. Sahil's company would ensure quality and take a small commission from each project. It was like building a bridge between the two worlds that badly needed each other. But a dream on a paper means nothing without execution. The struggle of funds. To build a basic website, Sahil needed money, something he didn't have much of. He approached relatives for loans, most laughed at the idea of offline businesses. These things fail in months. One uncle scoffed. Another said, first get a real job. These dreams will only burn your fingers. It hurt, but Sahil wasn't surprised. People rarely believe in these ideas until they succeed. Finally, he pulled together his freelancing savings, borrowed a little from a college friend, and hired two young developers on a part time basis. They agreed to work for minimal pay because they believed Sahil's passion, or maybe because they were also desperate for experience. For 3 months, Sahil lived like a monk. No outing, no new clothes. Every rupee went into building Skill Connect. At night, he worked as a freelancer to keep food on the table. In daytime, he coordinated with developers, designed layouts, and wrote content for the platform. Slowly, Skill Connect took shape. When the beta version finally launched, Sahil felt like a father seeing his child taking the first step. But the real storm was waiting just around the corner. The first betrayal. Among the two developers Sahil hired, one was bright corner named Raghav, quite efficient and always typing away with his headphone on. Sahil trusted him completely. One day, Sahil discovered something shocking. Raghav had copied the entire code of Skill Connect and was planning to launch a similar platform on his own with a new local investor's help. It felt like someone had stabbed him in the back. When confronted, Raghav didn't even deny it. It's just a business, he said coldly. You don't have to money to scale this, I do. Sahil was shattered. Nights of hard work, his tiny savings, his dream, someone was trying to snatch it all before it even started. For 2 days, Sahil didn't eat or sleep properly. Doubt screamed inside his head. Maybe they were right. Maybe I am not cut for this. Maybe I should have taken the safe job. But then he remembered the old man at the bus stop. Business is like a learning to walk. You may fall many times, but each fall teaches you where the ground is slippery. Sahil picked himself. He immediately changed all the server, password and secured the platform and removed Raghav from the project. The betrayal hurt, but also taught him the first big lesson. In business, trust is expensive. The empty lunch, after 6 months of struggle and the sleepless night and the countless obstacles, Skill Connect finally launched. Sahil waited for customers to pour in. He imagined notification buzzing, projects getting posted, money flowing, but days passed, nothing happened. The site was live but empty. No businesses, no freelancers, just silence. That's when Sahil realized building a product is only the half the battle. Getting people to use it was the real war. He had no money for fancy ads. He printed simple pamphlets and distributed them outside colleges, small offices, and even at tea stalls. He personally visited coaching centers, cyber cafe, and small shops, explaining how his platform could help. Some people listened, most ignored him. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, a few people, small projects trickled in. Logo designs, browser making, basic websites, earning were tiny, but Sahil celebrated each one like a festival. The breaking point. Just when things were starting to move, life threw another punch. His mother fell seriously ill. Hospital bills mounted again. Sahil now had to juggle, running a struggling startup, taking freelancing gigs to earn extra money, spending nights at the hospital with his mother. The pressure was crushing him. One night, after paying bills of hospital, Sahil checked his wallet. He had less than 500 rupees left. For the first time, He felt truly broken. Sitting alone outside the hospital, he whispered, "Maybe I should quit. Maybe this dream is too big for someone like me." But then he remembered his father's face, his childhood struggles, the tea stall jobs, and the notebook business, the freelancing nights. He realized if he quit now, all the pain would mean nothing. The first ray of hope. 2 weeks later, Sahil got an unexpected email. A medium sized company wanted to redesign the entire website and social media presence. They had found Skill Connect through a pamphlet Sahil had left months ago. The project was worth 50,000 rupees, more money than Sahil had ever seen at once. He poured his heart into it, working day and night with freelance from the platform. When the project was delivered, the client was thrilled. They not only paid it full but also recommended Skill Connect to the three other business. For the first time, Sahil felt like a tide was turning. The fire of comebacks. The first big project had brought Skill Connect some attention, but with attention came pressure. Sahil suddenly found himself dealing with bigger clients, bigger demands, and much bigger risk. With every new project, the workload became multiplied. Some clients were happy, others were painfully difficult, expecting perfections and throwaway prices. Freelancers sometimes delivered late, sometimes they disappeared midway, leaving Sahil to handle angry clients alone. But Sahil didn't give up. Every mistake taught him something new about business, about people, about the survival, the rise and the chaos. By the end of the first year, Skill Connect had completed over 120 projects. Small businesses were getting affordable services. Freelancers were earning regularly. Sahil was slowly building a name in his market. He even rented a small room or a small office with 2 interns helping him to coordinate in project. From the outside, it looked like Skill Connect was rising, but inside Sahil knew the reality. Payments from clients were often delayed. Some freelancers demanded more money mid-project. Sometimes competitor had started copying his model. And Sahil was burning out. For months, he barely slept more than 4 hours at night. His health began to decline. He lived on tea and biscuits, skipped meals, and ignored constant headache. But the fire inside him refused to die. He kept saying to himself, "One day all this pain will be worth it." The spark investor. In the middle of the chaos, a wealthy businessman named Mr. Mehra showed interest in Skill Connect. He invited Sahil to his office, a massive glass building in the city. For the first time, Sahil walked into an air-conditioned bedroom or a boardroom feeling completely out of place in a simple shirt and a worn-out shoes. Mr. Mehra offered to invest 20 lakh rupees into Skill Connect for 50% ownership. For Sahil, who had never seen more than 50,000 rupees in once, this sounded like tempting. With that money, he could hire a team, run ads, and scale the platform. But sometimes about Mr. Mehra's smile felt sharp. When Sahil asked for the time to think, Mr. Mehra leaned back and said, "Think fast, boy. Opportunities don't wait." That night, Sahil couldn't sheep half the company for 20 lakhs. If Skill Connect became big, he would lose control forever. After 2 days of thinking, Sahil said no. Everyone around him called him foolish. Even his mother said, "Maybe you should have taken the money. Life would become easier." But Sahil believed, better to build slowly and keep control than to sell your soul for quick money. The decision changed everything. They collapsed. 6 months later, Skill Connect hits the biggest crisis. A major client refused to pay after delivery, sitting unsatisfying work. 3 freelancers quit in the middle of the important project. Competitors ran heavy ads, stealing many of the Skill Connect clients. Sahil's saving dried up. He couldn't pay interns on time. Then the final blow came. His website server crashed due to technical glitch, erasing weeks of project data. Clients screamed, refunds were demanded. In one brutal month, Skill Connect went from rising star to a sinking ship. Sahil looked himself in one office night, staring at the ceiling for the first time in years. He cried silently. Maybe they were right, he whispered. Maybe dreams like mine aren't meant for the people like me. The stranger's advice. One evening, while returning home on nearly empty buses, Sahil sat next to the old man reading a book titled The Obstacle is the Way. The man noticed Sahil's tired face and asked, "Tough day?" Sahil nodded. The man smiled faintly. "Do you know how diamonds are made?" Sahil shook his head. "They are just carbon until they face years of unbearable pressure. That pressure either crushes them into dust or turns them into something priceless." Something about those words felt like a spark in Sahil's heart. Maybe the pressure wasn't the end. Maybe it was sharpening him for something bigger. He decided not to quit. He rebuilt. The Sahil spent the next 3 months rebuilding Skill Connect from scratch. Slowly, Skill Connect began breathing again. A few loyal clients returned, new freelance project joined, small profit trickled in. But Sahil knew this was just survival. If he wanted real growth, he needed something bold. The media spotlight. The local newspaper covered Sahil's journey with headline "Small Town Boy Builds a Big Digital Bride." Soon, a business magazine picked up the story. Even the popular YouTuber interviewed him. Suddenly, Skill Connect wasn't just a company, it was a story that people loved of grit, failure, and comeback. Within a year, Skill Connect handled over 1000 plus projects with clients in 3 other countries. But success brings the shadow. Just when everything looked perfect, Sahil discovered an ex-employee has started a copycat platform poaching some Skills Connect freelancers and clients using inside data. For 2 months, the rival platform ran aggressive ads, spreading a rumor that Skill Connect was shutting down. Some clients believed them, projects were lost. Instead, he introduced Skill Connect Premium, a higher priced service with graduated quality, fast delivery, and dedicated support. Clients loved it. Revenue jumped again. The rival platform faded away within a year. The turning point. By the third year, Skill Connect crossed 1 crore in total project value. Sahil opened a proper office in the city, hired 20 employees, and even started a scholarship program teaching digital skills. But success hadn't even testing him. He still remembered nights of hunger, betrayals, and empty wallets. One evening, standing at his office, watching the city lights, Sahil whispered, "This is just a beginning. The real dream is much more bigger." He didn't know then the next chapter of his life would change and take the Skill Connect into empire he never imagined. The final chapter. The conference hall was silent for a moment, the kind of silence that carries weight. Sahil stood on the stage staring at the massive screen behind him that displayed the company's name, Skyline Innovation PVT Ltd. It was no longer just a small startup struggling to survive. It was now one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country. The applause started slowly and grew louder. People were cheering his name, Sahil, Sahil, Sahil. And for the moment, he felt like the young boy from a small town who once dreamed too big for the world to believe in. The storm before the calm. After the expansion deal, Sahil had thought the worst was behind him. Life had one last test waiting. The global economy took a hit, investors started pulling out of risky ventures, the tech market crashed unexpectedly. Suddenly, the millions of funding that Sahil had secured were at risk. Some board members panicked. They wanted to shut down the project and cut off the employees and play it safe. But Sahil wasn't ready to give up. He called for an emergency meeting. I didn't came this far to run away when the things get tough, he said. If we survive the storm, we will come it stronger than ever. I need each one of you to trust me more time. There was hesitation. Some left the company fearing loss, but the core team, the simple project, people who believed him had nothing. They stayed. Together, they worked day and night, cutting unnecessary costs, finding the creative ways to keep the project alive, and personally convincing investors to hold a little longer. For 6 months, it felt like they were walking on a tightrope above a burning fire. One wrong step, and everything would fall apart. But Sahil never lost hope. The turning point. Then the miracle happens. A major e-commerce giant approached them for a partnership deal. They waited to use Sahil software solutions across the entire platform. The deal was worth millions. If Sahil could pull this off, Skyline Innovations would not only survive the recession but dominate the market. Negotiations were made. The rival companies tried to undercut him, offering lower prices, criticizing him, claimed Sahil's company lacked the experience for such massive project. But Sahil went into the final meeting with confidence. He stood before the board of the e-commerce giant and said, you can choose someone bigger or you can choose something hungrier. Someone who will give every heartbeat to make sure you succeed. That's us. We don't just deliver software, we deliver trust, commitment and sleepless night until the job is done. Something in the word struck at the board member, maybe in its eyes, tired but determined, carrying the weight of every battle he fought. They signed the deal. The rise to the top. When that single deal, everything changed. Investor return, media outlets started covering Skyline Innovations as the comeback story of the year. Sahil faced appearance on magazine covers with headlines like From Rags to Riches, Sahil Unbelieved Journey. But Sahil didn't let the fame distract him. He expanded carefully, hiring brilliant minds, focusing on project quality, and making sure the company culture stayed rooted in the passion. Under this leadership, Skyline Innovation launched a new projects in AI automation and e-commerce solutions within 3 years. The company has valued over $500 million. Emotional homecoming. One day, Sahil returned to his home after almost a decade. The streets were the same, but he had changed. He wasn't the struggling boy anymore. He was the man who turned the dreams into reality. He visited small tea stall where he used to sit with his notebook, sketching impossible ideas. The shop owner, now older, recognized him instantly. Sahil, the man said, his eyes widening. I see you on TV now. You made it big, huh? Sahil smiled, feeling a lump in his throat. I made it because people like you believed in me when no one else did. He paid for the tea, but this time he bought cups for everyone there. It was a silent way of saying life had come at full circle. The legacy years passed, Silent Innovations became a global name, but Sahil knew life wasn't just about building companies, it was building people. He started the Sahil Foundation, offering free mentorship programs, calling for unprivileged students and startup funds to young entrepreneurs with big dreams but empty pockets, just like he was once. During one of the foundation events, a young girl asked, Sir, what does it take to become like you? Sahil thought for a moment and then he replied, It takes sleepless night, unshakable belief, and the courage to keep walking when the road disappears. But most importantly, it takes failure. Don't run from it, learn from it. The final moment. The story came at full circle at Entrepreneur of the Year award. Sahil was on the stage, receiving the highest honor of the business world. Cameras flashed, the audience applauded, and many more things happened. But he held a trophy. His heist searched for the someone crowd, his parents, his old friends, his first team members. He found them smiling through tears. He spoke into the microphone. This isn't just my award. It belongs to everyone who stood by me when I had nothing. It belongs to every dreamer who out there who thinks success is impossible. Trust me, it's not. I was a nobody once. If I can stand here today, so can you. The crowd rose by standing ovation. Years later, people would tell Sahil's story in school, colleges, and business seminars. They would talk about the boy who started with nothing, faced betrayals, fought failures, and built the empire of his dream. But Sahil never called himself a hero. He always said, I wasn't a hero, I was just someone who refused to quit, and maybe that was made me one.